How you doing, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast. We are the only wrestling podcast that brings you back 30 years with vintage audio, featuring some of the biggest names of that time, and this episode is no exception. The Pro Wrestling Spotlight covered all the news stories and breaking developments that happened in real time, and now we get to relive that history and those moments right here on this podcast. Today, we will review the show that aired on 1240 AM WGBB in West Babylon, New York on October the 2nd, 1994. Special guests on this show from 29 years ago include Cactus Jack, fresh off his leaving WCW, and Herb Abrams UWF's Blackjack Brawl. And also Mark Madden was on that show discussing Ric Flair's Loser Must Retire match against Hulk Hogan. But before we get to all of that, as I do each and every week, I want you to run right now. Go right now to patreon.com/John Arezzi and sign up. $5 a month gets you in the door. You get the entire archives of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight radio show at your disposal. You also can get vintage audio, vintage video, 8mm films, opportunities to appear on the show. There are several levels, but check it out. Patreon.com/John Arezzi. Let's bring on our friend Marsh. Very busy man, as he always is.
Hey, you.
Hey-oh, how you going? There's Marsh. Why don't you say, hey now? Hey now.
Hey now.
You ever watch that? That show is always like, hey now, and Howard Stern uses that a lot. So, hi-oh.
Stern does?
Hey now. Wonderful
That's
stuff.
Funny.
So we got a crazy one this week. I think a little crazy, but there was a lot going on. I wasn't on the air for a week.
You weren't on the air for a week. You were clearly a little annoyed at kind of where everything stood.
Perturbed.
The tape itself sounded a little peculiar in that it cut off at random spots. There's no outro.
Yeah, we were the last 15 minutes of the show was not. It was a 90-minute cassette. Now that I looked at it, because a lot of times I had a 120-minute cassette, so I just flip it over and we get the whole thing. So yeah, we have it cuts off at the end of side one, and then when we turn it over, it's like in the beginning of the Cactus Jack interview. These are for all the patrons who hear the unedited show. And then the last several minutes of the show, because it was only a 90-minute cassette, it's not there.
It's just not there. And I don't even know how much of an interview you had before, because you clearly asked a question because he's answering it when we...
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of an intro.
It's the unfortunate thing of 29 years later, Marsh. It's a very unfortunate thing. It happens. What can I say?
Yeah, but even then, I mean, because someone talked about how nice it was to have you back on the air, and even then you said, yeah, I wasn't sure, last show was really annoying, so it's like, I wonder if you just didn't care what tape you had.
I was at the point where I really didn't care too much anymore.
Yeah.
I was getting there. It was a slow burn. It was a slow
90
burn.
minutes is enough of the show to count. So, who was the one recording it? Like, who's flipping the tape?
It was, I'm trying to think, because I know EVD was in the control room. NYG was in the control room. I think I had access to the cassette player next to where the microphones were set up. So it could have been my error. Or it could have been, they also had it in the control room. Bottom line is, I don't remember.
But sometimes you would do it, and sometimes the control room would?
Sometimes.
Just go back and forth. Okay.
I also wonder in the studio, because sometimes there was an engineer running the board, and it was always craziness. And sometimes I had an assistant intern. For a while, I had a producer. So it could have been a number of different things. But we apologize for that. But it's still a good freaking show.
Yeah, it was still pretty cool. You tried to get Meltzer on. That never happened, as far as I can tell. But he
retweeted a tweet of mine yesterday.
Meltzer did?
I was wishing him a happy birthday, and I said I always respected him from years ago, and he a quote retweet. Always enjoy hearing from you. Dave, come on the show now. Now it's time.
Come on the damn
You
show.
open up that can of worms. Let's do it.
Happy birthday. Come on the show. Come on.
Yeah. We'll have a birthday celebration for him.
Yeah. We'll do a whole thing. I'll get little
Bring on
streamers.
Russo. Bring Russo on to say happy birthday, and Bischoff.
We get
all the people that adore him.
Wade Keller.
Wade. Why not? And even Vincent Kennedy McMahon. We'll see if we can get him.
Yeah, he's not doing much. Everyone says he doesn't do anything backstage anymore. So come on, man.
He's grooming that mustache.
Just constantly brushing it. Just nonstop.
He loves it. He loves that little mustache. I'm in a little wacky mood today, man.
Well, this one was notable. You did 250 episodes. This was episode number 250.
Fucking benchmark. What a milestone.
But it was. And what I also thought was nuts is that you were fully aware because you numbered all the tapes. Mm-hmm. And at no point did you make mention there's been 250 of them. And like nowadays when people do podcasts, they get to 100 in a year, 2 years, because they'll just do 2 or 3 episodes and they'll be like, we're at a show 100. And they make
Hey, this is episode for us 97, isn't it?
Yes, this is 97.
Yeah. So we got 3 more to go to that magical 100 mark.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I just put my foot in my mouth on that one.
We got to do something to celebrate that.
Yeah, we're going to have to.
Mm-hmm. We'll mention it at the beginning of the podcast and we'll say, there you go.
There it is.
Maybe we'll bring on all the, the ex-co-hosts that I've had.
That'd be cool. Maybe that's when we try and get Bruce Jacobs on or something. I don't know. We'll figure something out.
We'll figure it out. We always have that. We're always noodling.
I'm always into noodles. So this was interesting because you'd missed a week.
Yep.
You went to the Blackjack Brawl in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
You said, fuck it, I'm going.
Yep.
You went to ECW the night before. You did not go to the CAC. You sent Don to go.
Well, Donnie was going anyway.
Well, yeah.
But I'm trying to think. The Blackjack Brawl was what? That was on a Friday night? Or Saturday? I don't even know. Because it sounds like... Because if I went to ECW and to Vegas in the same weekend, how did I do that?
I think there were reverse weekends, right? So you did your show. The next weekend you were Blackjack. This weekend you were back. Did ECW came in to do your show.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, because there was that missing week. There was that week that it wasn't around. That's right.
Yeah.
So I went to Vegas, came back, and then the night before this particular show was ECW.
Yeah, and you canceled the bus trip.
Yeah, because no one didn't have enough people.
And that's also crazy to me because ECW was slammed with people. It was lively as ever. And you couldn't get 20 people on a bus from New York to want to go?
Well,
you know what I mean? You're just a little nuts.
Hey, it's not unlike what happens today with us, is it?
That's true. It's just
we figured we'd have 200 patrons by now, and it's always 72 to 74.
Those are my favorite 72 to 74
trying to do a bus trip. It's probably the same percentile.
That's true. And then I guess when you think about it, yeah, I mean, what do they say? If you get 1% of your viewing audience to buy the pay-per-view, then that's a good turnaround. Or 10% or something like that.
Yes.
I guess when you think about it too.
You know what? The fans from back then, even though, each bus trip wasn't sold out and some I canceled, whatever, and even with what we do today, there's a loyal following of people just love what we do and loved what I did 30 years ago and enjoy reminiscing today. So each and every one of those people I certainly appreciate. I wish there was more of them, but they are always going to be, I'm always going to be grateful for all of them.
I also think it's interesting to note just the amount of people who just don't want to engage. They're just observers and intakers of content, ECW included, where it's like, no, I don't want to engage with that. Like you talk about with the Patreons, you send out a Zoom link from time to time to have everybody jump on, and it's usually like 5 or 6 people. And you're like, out of 70? Like, it's just the amount of people who don't want to participate in that aspect.
Right.
Probably is a much larger scale.
And some people come on the Zoom and remain anonymous. They don't even participate. They just listen.
Yeah. And that's true for other ones I've been to as well, where people just kind of pop in, they leave everything off, and then they're just there. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is. We're fine with it, though. We love
Yeah,
you all.
I don't have any issues with it, but I was bummed that this bus trip got canceled.
Yeah.
But I was bummed that this bus trip got canceled.
Yeah.
And speaking of canceled, so was your November 5th show. You officially announced you will not be doing a November 5th Weekend of Champions.
Yeah.
It was neat. You were still toying with calling it Weekend of Champions when it wasn't going to be a full weekend. It was only going to be a day.
Yeah. It was a brand.
That's true. It was a brand for it. And this is also where you announced that Ric Flair is scheduled to take on Hogan in a loser must retire match, which let everybody know that Flair was going to lose because they had just re-signed Hogan, and that you were told, Flair was told on Monday he was going to have to retire, and you're going to talk about that and get into that with Mark Madden. So I didn't pull that part, but that was a lot going on.
There was, and Madden, of course, was really close friends with Rick.
Yes.
Over all the years up until they had their falling out with the podcast not too long ago. But they were they were friendly for years. And Madden was the go-to guy for Flair, you know?
Yeah. Now I guess it's Conrad.
Yes, it is.
And I guess Flair just popped up.
Yeah. And I know we're taping this and, you know, people won't hear this for another week, or patrons on Sunday and then everybody else the following week. But Flair on AEW yesterday, that was crazy.
What did you think of it?
The big surprise for Sting, I thought it was, well, I mean, they are joined at the hip. I mean, that first Clash of the Champions was historic. What a great match. And it elevated Sting to a new level. And they were so connected with each other over the years because of their feud. And but it's really Nature Boy Ric Flair just earning money wherever he can. There's no loyalty, you know, with his WWE, but I think it came off really well. Okay. People popped. As long as he doesn't turn on him now and stay there and turn on him, and then Sting's final match is against Rick. Can you imagine that?
That would be so funny. It would just be so funny to me. Well, for one, because they did Flair's last match, a year or two ago. They made a huge stink of it. So if he came back...
He almost croaked in that match.
I know. That's my only thing, is I do find it very ironic that we're listening to these tapes and we're about to even talk about it here with Madden, about how many years does Rick possibly have left. And
29 years ago.
29 years ago. Even the callers were saying at a certain point that watching Flair matches were boring and tedious, and he's lost a step. And was it Shane Douglas just 2 weeks ago said that he was an embarrassment of himself and needs to hang it up.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with it then, but it has been quite a while since I've seen Flair and thought this is great Flair content. It just feels like we're all indulging in his quest.
Well, it's sad to see someone get old, especially somebody who was revered as Rick. And it could be a good time now to maybe in the next week or so to bring on the gentleman that wrote the book, The Last Real World's Champion, Tim Hornbaker. He's agreed to come on the show to discuss the Nature Boy. So these are kind of questions that we can even ask him. I'll reach out because he said he'd do the show, and I think there would be a fascinating conversation about Rick.
Yeah. When is he going to put out the addendum about his AEW run?
Oh, I know, right?
Yeah. But I haven't personally seen his AEW thing yet, but like I said, I haven't seen anything from him in a while that made me go, this can't miss. But it is interesting that, like you said, he's over in AEW doing a thing with Sting. It's kind of neat.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it was kind of... and Tony Schiavone was the most animated I'd seen him since his start at AEW. I mean, what'd they do? Put a lightning rod up his ass or something? Because he was excited for the first time. You know, usually he just stands there with the mic and he says one sentence and they rip the mic out of his hand and they cut their promo.
And then tell him to go, yeah.
But last night he was on fire. All
right. It's good to see Tony all excited.
Got me excited. It was like, go Tony.
Put Tony in this match. Yeah.
But we
But
digress. Yes.
yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more. You did have Donnie call in from the CAC
Yeah.
in a taped segment. Did you tape that at the house?
I don't remember, man. It was in the studio in the house. It wasn't in the car because we didn't have a car. We didn't have that technology then. So
No.
we got it done.
Yeah, I didn't pull any clips from it because I didn't think there was any like notable stories or quirky little
Right.
bits. So that's for the Patreons. But I
Yeah.
did think the most notable thing was Donnie had almost like a deeper voice. He was clearly so tired from staying up all
Well,
night.
he doesn't when he goes to one of these events, he doesn't sleep.
Yeah.
He'll stay up. He will not go to sleep. He will just stay up for the entire run or whatever, 2-3 days. He ain't going to sleep.
He's a machine.
He is.
You run some ads for Elenos Comics is doing a Magic the Gathering con.
Yeah.
And I thought that was awesome because at this year I was playing that with my brothers. So I thought
this
that was
year.
Cool. The year of 94.
Oh, okay. Not this year, like 2023.
No, I don't. My brother still plays.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I still
that
have
was
one
a big
card.
Deal,
though.
Man.
It was. I have one card. It's my only Magic story. I'll tell it real fast, though, is my brother borrowed a card from me for a deck for a tournament back here in like 94. Turns out that card was almost so powerful or whatever it was so tricky that they decided they would never print that card again. So my brother became an economist and used to write an article about the economy of Magic the Gathering. Eventually came across that card for around $60. Sent me a text that he's always felt bad that I gave him that card and he lost it. He said, I can either send you the money or I can send you the card. And I said, send me the card. That card now is worth like $300, $400. It's insane.
Smart choice.
Yeah. Yeah. But so I got a kick out of hearing it on an old wrestling show, a little Magic little thing.
Mm-hmm.
Here's you doing your version of the capsule because Don's not going to be doing the capsule.
Excellent. I probably did a horrendous job, but let's hear it.
We are awaiting now a conference call scheduled to talk to Mark Madden of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and also Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And this is in regards to the biggest wrestling news story of the week and perhaps one of the biggest stories of the year and in many years. It was a stunning move that took place this past Monday in Atlanta, Georgia. The match was scheduled between Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair for Halloween Havoc on the 23rd of October. That stipulation was if Hulk Hogan would lose the match, he would retire. However, Flair was informed this past Monday that the match is now a loser must retire match, and Flair obviously is the guy that's going to have to lose that match. So we are going to discuss this big news story right here at the program in just a little bit. It was a very big news week in professional wrestling. Some of the other things that happened since Donnie wasn't here for the news capsule. Jushin Thunder Liger, one of the greatest wrestlers in the world today, broke his leg in a match over in Japan. He's going to be out of action for at least 6 months. Jushin Liger breaking his leg very badly in a match that took place on the 24th of September over in Japan. Also, other big news in wrestling this week, Jesse the Body Ventura. He is now gone from WCW officially. So Jesse's tenure with WCW finished. And he still had a number of months remaining on his contract. Also, Terry Funk appears to be gone from WCW as well, sending them a fax informing them that he couldn't continue to work under the present deal. Terry has now recently signed in the last week in Japan with the Victor Quinones IWA promotion. So lots of big breaking stories over the past week or so regarding professional wrestling. Jim Ross, he is now going to be working with Smoky Mountain Wrestling. He officially replaces their play-by-play man, Bob Caudle, as the lead announcer, beginning with the television tapings that are scheduled for tomorrow. Also, Cactus Jack will be appearing on those TV tapes, and we'll talk to Cactus about that later in the program today. So a lot of things happening in professional wrestling that we will be talking about here on today's program. Of course, November 6th, the International Wrestling Council and the AAA promotion of Mexico doing their pay-per-view show, and WCW began promoting that on syndicated television a week ago. Matter of fact, last week in Tijuana, the two announcers that will be doing the play-by-play for that show, Chris Cruz and also Mike Tenay, were in Tijuana watching the AAA there to get some feelers and notes regarding the pay-per-view telecast that's going to take place on November 6th. And also last night, once again, ECW in the Philadelphia ECW Arena, and it was a spectacular show. Once again, it was just a great match between Chris Benoit and Sabu. Also, Shane Douglas and Too Cold Scorpio had a tremendous match. And in that tag team encounter, Cactus Jack and Mikey Whipwreck defending the ECW tag team crowns as they defeated a Public Enemy in a wild throughout the arena brawl. Cactus ending the show with a baseball bat up on the stage area, smashing a table to bits. Action was throughout the arena, and let me tell you once again, ECW. I can't help but say nothing but good things about the promotion. It's a very, very exciting promotion, and I was there last night, and you just feel like you're part of a just a nonstop thrill per minute show. It was like I said, it was Philadelphia's little secret right now, and hopefully it'll be expanding in the near future to the markets here in the New York area. I know they just completed a few shows down in Florida, which were very well received by the fans. Attendance wasn't as good as they had hoped, but they still did a few hundred people in one of the areas and 600 people at the other place down in Florida. Also, ECW moving to Hamburg, Pennsylvania for their television, and they drew about 600 people to the Hamburg Field House this past Friday.
Lots going on that week.
AAA shows coming up, and you really, I love to hear how excited you are about ECW.
Yeah.
No matter how much you felt slighted by the November 5th thing, you still are just like, but the shows are so good, you know? You'd even mentioned it. You had was it a promoter guy, George Tangle, was helping you put together the show?
He was, it was just purely for his wrestling license.
Okay. Because you made mention that you considered getting your wrestling license once he pulled out, but also felt that just meant the show should probably just be canceled for now.
Yeah, well, there's no way to run a show in New York without a licensed promoter to do it.
Yeah,
not a convention, of course, but a live show.
Yeah. What did it take to get a license?
You had to be bonded. I think there's a $10,000 bond you put up, and they do background checks and all of that, and it's political as well. You have to know people who know people, and so it wasn't the easiest thing in the world to do.
Huh. But okay, so you always had to, when you were running shows out there, you always had to partner with somebody. Like when you did the one in Dallas, that's why you partnered with that one lady.
Well, it was in New York.
In New York, did a license?
Yeah, I didn't need a promoter's license in Dallas. Each state is different.
Oh, okay.
And New York is very strict, probably the strictest athletic commission in the country, where you had to have someone licensed. So even when I did the show in '93, there was a license that had to be used. I don't know if it was Howard Rapp or whoever. Sonny Blaze helped me. So yeah, but you have to have a license. New York was the tough state to get a license in.
Sonny knew people, man.
Yes, he did.
But yeah, you were talking about all the stuff. JR going to Smoky Mountain, I thought was big. Terry Funk going back to Japan, I thought was pretty big. Jesse Ventura leaving WCW. Jesse Ventura had a sweet deal out there too.
He did. He got paid a lot of money, and I think it was worth it. But for him to leave, who knows what was going on behind the scenes?
Yeah,
he was probably thinking about running for mayor at that time anyway, or he was a mayor at that time, Brooklyn Park, Minnesota.
He was paid more than a lot of the wrestlers at the time too. I don't know if people know that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then of course he became governor and all that. So And now he's in Mexico, I believe, isn't he? Lives in Mexico. Lives in the.
Did he? He moved to Mexico?
He's been living in Mexico for a lot of years. Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
It seems weird, sketchy for a governor to be like, and I live in Mexico now.
Yeah.
All right. You did finally get Mark Madden on the line to talk specifically about Flair.
Yeah, because this was get a hold of Meltzer, right?
Well, it's not that you couldn't get a hold of Meltzer. You explained that right away.
Well,
so let's get into why Meltzer's not there.
All right.
Okay, we're back, and I'd like to thank the AT&T conference call operators for being so inept today. Idiots. We're going to still try to conference Dave Meltzer and Mark Madden. We do have Mark on the line right now from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Mark, are you there?
Hello?
Mark.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Been trying to get to you and Dave on a conference call here, but AT&T inept conference call operators working overtime today. Mark, big story breaking this week, and of course, if listeners out there who are not familiar with Mark Madden, Mark is with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, I believe.
Correct.
Also does a one of the days for WCW's 900 number. Controversial reporter, but someone who speaks from his heart all the time. This past week in Atlanta, Georgia, WCW making a move which pretty much has been the talk of the wrestling world, and that regards the match between Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan coming up on Halloween Havoc. Main event now stipulates that the loser must retire from professional wrestling, which kind of came as a shock to a lot of people, Mark.
Yeah, the fact that Ric Flair would be more or less treated like an employee after all he's done for WCW and its predecessor, Jim Crockett Promotions, strikes a lot of people as a rather insensitive act on the part of WCW management. I think, however, that all that aside, what bears examination more, John, is just the fact that WCW, in terms of their product, is painting themselves into a corner by having Ric Flair retire on October 23rd at Halloween Havoc. After Hogan-Flair, which, make no mistake about it, Hogan did not save the company, did not turn the company around. Hogan versus Flair is what turned the company around, not Hogan versus Brand X. It was the dream matchup of the two greatest wrestlers that most of the viewing audience had ever remembered seeing. After Flair retires, which I am sure is an inescapable happening at this point, after Flair retires, Hogan will match up with Vader, which I think can do some decent business as well. But then what? I defy anyone at that company or outside that company to tell me what they can do to make money after Hogan and Vader and Hogan or Flair are over.
Well, it's certainly that's a big question mark. But just the fact of this situation, you're close to. Well, you're friends with Flair.
Yeah, I've known Ric Flair for a number of years. Correct.
What is his reaction to all this that's gone down? Have you talked to him, or can you?
Yeah, we've spoken. Frankly, a lot of times when we speak, it's in terms of what I'm doing on the 900 number and future plans for that. I'd prefer not to go into his feelings on his impending retirement. For one thing, I don't think they're all sorted out yet. But
okay,
I think that should be up to him to tell people in whatever interviews he chooses to do after that fact. I will say this: the reaction around the company, from what I understand, is very divided. You see, there's a lot of resentment towards Ric Flair among the younger wrestlers who feel that they have never been given their due because of the presence of people like Ric Flair over the course of 20 years in that company. Of course, what those young wrestlers don't understand is when Ric Flair was their age, he seized the day. He was in Jim Crockett Promotions. He just got his push by just being so charismatic and such a good worker that the company had no choice but to push him. And among the older guard down in WCW that has been with Ric Flair for a long time, I know the attitude is more just like utter disbelief, that they can't believe that the guy's being asked to retire. I think among the wrestling populace, John, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the viewing public expects some kind of swerve on this.
Yeah.
Some kind of thing where no one retires. I really can honestly say that will not be the case. However, if the general public perceives that there's going to be some kind of swerve, some kind of screw job where no one retires after October 23rd, that will not affect the buy rate very positively at all.
I think WCW is anticipating a big buy rate here, and of course, with the stipulation that now both men, the loser must retire, I think it's going to increase their buy rate. But then again, it really is a shocking situation regarding Flair.
It is.
Shocking revelation, and he can guarantee it's not a work. Someone is definitely going to retire.
Yeah.
Flair definitely never wrestled again after October 24th, 1994.
What a great career he had. I can't believe it's been 29 years. We miss him so.
Yeah. It is cool, though, and I don't quite remember how they just talked out of it. I think it was the promo he came back and stripped down and just said, I ain't going anywhere. Like, I think it was we just decided he's not retiring anymore. I don't think they made that.
I don't know how long the absence was. I don't remember. I'm sure it's out there on the internet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be curious to know how long that lasted.
Yeah. I'll look it up during the next clip. But I also thought it was really notable that he's talking about how business has been picking up in WCW, and strictly because it's Hogan versus Flair specifically. And I was like, I felt like a lot of truth in that.
Hey, at the time, they were still these enormous icons, and really for Hogan, the popularity, even though it wasn't like it was Hulkamania era, and Flair was Flair. I mean, you're talking about the upper echelon of performers for that era.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've already started talking about Hogan versus Vader. I only took 2 clips from the Mark Madden interview. You can get all of it on the Patreon. But this is the second clip where he talks specifically about how this is going to affect Flair.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing about Ric Flair, obviously he's been a hero to many of the wrestling fans out there, a good majority of them. He's been the guy that has made people enjoy wrestling more than ever before. His performances in the ring over the last several years have been phenomenal. But the situation has developed with him and Hulk Hogan since Hogan has come in. Flair has been pretty much a whipping boy for Hogan. And the fact that now Flair is going to go out with this type of loss, and the last few months, these type of losses to Hogan and being just whipped upon, you think that's going to take away some of the luster of the magic of Ric Flair's name?
No, not in the least. I think one thing people lose sight of when they watch pro wrestling, even the inside fans such as your listeners, John, that in pro wrestling, you do what you're told. Rare is the exception where a man can control what is booked for him as a professional wrestler. I think the major exceptions to that rule are Hulk Hogan, Dusty Rhodes when he booked WCW, and we all know how well that worked.
Mm-hmm.
Ric Flair, for the most part, when he booked the company, and let's face it, right now, he books everything but what Hulk Hogan wants booked. To call him the booker is accurate, but, I mean, Hulk Hogan certainly has a great deal of input on situations involving Hulk Hogan. However, it's pretty tough for a heel to go out, with his hand raised. If Ric Flair was going to retire as a heel, really, this is probably, I don't want to say the best way to do it because I don't think it should be happening at all. But if he has to go out, getting beat by Hulk Hogan as a heel is probably as good a way as any. The thing that I fear the most is that on the telecast, when Rick, leaves the ring for the final time, and we see Hogan and his entourage of idiots posing in the ring afterwards, that the announcers will gloss over the contributions Ric Flair has made to wrestling in general and to that company in particular. But however, to the people who matter, to the people who follow wrestling over a long period of time, I don't think Ric Flair's reputation can be tarnished by this. To the people who watch wrestling casually, I mean, they forget what happens the next day, okay? It's meant as that kind of product to people like that. So, no, I don't think this particularly tarnishes Rick's reputation.
Yeah, he was right.
Yeah, it didn't tarnish at all. Matter of fact, he was back January 95 for an interview at Clash of Champions. He attacks Hogan in Super Brawl 5, and then started appearing as Vader's part-time manager, who began a feud with Hogan, which then led to Flair completely nagging Hogan for months, when Hogan and Savage petitioned WCW to let Flair come back, and they do. So he's back wrestling within 5-6 months.
Makes sense. But he still had a presence there, obviously, as Vader's guy. And Yeah, so I guess that's the way they handled it, and he was back in the ring, like you said, several months later.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you guys, question how Hogan Vader's going to play out, and Madden even goes on to speculate that Vader might just leave the company if he has to be in a feud with Hogan for too long, where Hogan starts trying to push him around. He's like, Vader just won't do that. He'll just go back to Japan.
No, he took his career way too serious. He didn't want to get diminished.
Yeah,
he had this huge reputation as a legit tough guy, and in Japan, he was freaking huge.
Yeah, I love that big helmet thing.
Yeah, he was one of those guys that I, was a little frightened of.
Yeah,
I didn't know him personally, never interviewed him or anything, but it was just one of those guys that I would choose to stay away from if I had the opportunity to be in the same room.
Really? Wow. I mean, was he not very approachable?
He never was in the same room. I don't remember, but he would be. He would be one of them dudes, man. I just want to steer clear of.
I always thought he had the coolest mask as a kid, and then once he appeared on Boy Meets World, which was like my show growing up, I was like, that's the coolest guy. Thunder in Paradise appears to be in limbo, so you guys are speculating Hogan's got a lot more free time, and that the Flair match feels like a super level hot shotting. You do say that WWE is starting to feel like an old WWF because there is speculation Slaughter might come in, that Warlord
would come. Was he even born then?
Yeah, Wardlow's coming in, Power Hobbs,
Orange Cassidy.
Yeah, they're all coming over like old school WWF style. Warlord and Honky Tonk came back. Slaughter was there, but they weren't sure if he was coming in or not. And Madden largely agreed. It's feeling a little bit weird, but he's saying that if the fan base like you and him, who really truly loved like the Flair NWA days, were as prevalent as you felt like they were, they wouldn't have felt the need to bring in the Hogan to begin with. That the numbers just aren't there. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that same argument people have today about whether or not AEW does or doesn't cater too much to the hardcore fan, right? And how do you grow your fan base? And I see people all the time, they got to cater the casual fan. It's like, but there's so many hardcore fans. And I mean, I think there's a place for both to live for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what I noticed too about this thing, with Flair and Sting?
Yeah.
They were really putting over TBS, weren't they?
They always put over the network so crazy heavy. I thought about that too. A lot of the AEW toys, when they have little microphones and stuff, it's got TNT logo on it, TPS belt. The little rings they have like the TBS and TNT logos on the turnbuckles. I'm like, that's a lot
really
of other
interesting to see what happens next year with them. I'm sure they're going to do another TV rights deal,
right? I thought about that too.
My guy at Warner Brothers Discovery in a while,
yeah.
So I don't have any new information. It's going to be fascinating to see what that next deal looks like.
Imagine they don't end up on TBS, TNT. Imagine if they do strictly go over to HBO. But imagine if they did. What would happen to the
they're
TNT?
Doing too many. They're kind of like the darlings of the WBD community right now. I mean, they really are. I mean, yeah, the head of programming always highlights them. Always talks about the numbers that they draw in the demo that they're trying to reach. So it's a top, even though it could be argued on social media, and it is constantly. Yeah. Warner Brothers Discovery is happy with the performance of the ratings.
And that's the game. That's the whole thing.
That's the whole enchilada, man.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what any of us nerds online scream about.
Nope, not at all.
Is the network happy? Yes or no?
That's it. And Tony Khan does everything in his power to keep them happy.
Yeah.
And them mentioning TBS in almost every sentence during that taping, I'm like, yeah, there's a method to all this madness.
Do you ever wonder what channel you're watching while you're watching it?
No.
Yeah, me neither. So I don't know why it's bringing it up.
No, I
don't watch
I
it.
have all the stuff on auto record, and
Yeah.
but sometimes it drives me crazy trying to find out, like trying to search for. I want to see a program and trying to find the freaking network
Yes.
in my channel guide, because there's a million channels and I only watch probably half a dozen.
You should just start deleting them.
Streaming, that's the way to go. It's the way of the future.
That's the way to do it. You guys speculate too on if it's a work or not, and you guys both do not believe that it's a work, but that there's a good chance they go back on it in a few months,
which they do.
Yeah. It does bring us to Cactus Jack.
Yeah,
we got him on the phone, fresh off of the Blackjack Brawl.
Yeah,
it was amazing. Your guys' conversations about the brawl. So we didn't end up recording yesterday, and I was ready for the show early. So I decided yesterday I was going to watch the Blackjack Brawl. And I watched the whole thing, and I saw the shirt you reference in one of these callers about the Mr. Electricity shirt. I looked all over trying to find a picture of that shirt clear, and I could not find one.
Couldn't do it.
Yeah, but you can kind of make it out on the old tape.
It's a collector's item.
No one was going to get rid of it. It was too amazing. Like, how tall was Herb Abrams?
Oh, he was tiny. He was probably 5'4", 5'4", maybe.
Tops.
He was a tiny dude.
Even the shirt said Mr. Electricity in like lightning font. Had two wrestlers on the side. I couldn't make out who they were, and a little tiny Herb in between them with the microphone.
I mean, he loved his time in the wrestling business.
Yes, he did.
He was a crazy son of a bitch.
He was so funny. Let me play the beginning of the interview with Cactus Jack, because clearly you asked him about how he felt the show went. And he talks a little bit about Snuka.
Okay.
At least I got a chance to wrestle Jimmy Snuka, who was my hero. So it wasn't a total loss for me, so I'm getting to do a lot of things. And really, I mean, let's face it, if I had gone up on that second balcony and destroyed a car and a table with chairs and people were diving off the tables, I would have been fined several $1,000s, possibly fired by WCW. Instead, I'm embraced when I get back, and they say, hey, that was great.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you one problem I have, John, is, believe it or not, when I played baseball, I was really a lot more of a contact hitter. I hit my share of home runs, and I was a damn good pitcher. But basically, Cactus Jack had the hand-eye coordination and made a lot of contact. But now you're asking me to switch gears, because when we come back November 5th in a baseball bat match, Cactus Jack's swinging for the fences.
Now, that's November 5th in Philadelphia. Will be a baseball bat match, you and Mikey?
I think so. We're going to try to work that out. Me and Mikey. I've taken the kid under my wing, and I'm really, I see a lot of potential in him. And more importantly, John, this kid, without so much talent, has the ability to make wrestling fun for people to watch and fun for a guy like me to get back there in the ring.
Yeah. The whole perspective of ECW, and I try to give the fans an accurate portrayal of what's going on in ECW. I said earlier today it was Philadelphia's little secret. It's almost like you get into that bingo hall, and from 7:30, 8 o'clock until the old ladies come in to play bingo at midnight, it's nonstop insanity. It's just the crowd on their feet every single match. Have you wrestled in front of a hotter crowd than the ECW crowd?
Man, I really don't think so. I've wrestled in front of certain crowds, maybe in small towns, where just the fact that Kerry Von Erich was there made everyone go crazy.
Yeah.
But never in front of people who actually know what's going on, where you have to actually produce to get that type of reaction. And if you don't produce, you won't get the reaction. So when we go out there, it's a real good feeling to hear the people chanting ECW after the match, or last night to hear them chanting Cactus Jack. Yeah, I really like it.
Well, you certainly, let's say, last night at the end, you were there on the stage by yourself with that baseball bat in your hand after you demolished a table. Fans had scattered everywhere, production people had scattered everywhere, and it was just like you were in front of 1,000 people or so, and they were all just chanting your name. It was a pretty unbelievable sight. It was something that I had certainly never seen before, and I've been watching your career for a long, long time. All these people in unison chanting your name. It was a pretty interesting sight to see, and it probably made you feel real good just to
Yeah, you know what was funny, though? It made me feel great. I was on top of a cloud, and then all of a sudden my bat was no longer in my hand. Rocco Rock came out, and all I had was a flimsy plastic chair, and he started wailing away at me. And I think the Cactus Jack, that image in my mind quickly deteriorated because I felt like about a 3 or 4 year old kid without his blankets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, he was trying to kill me. So, but hopefully it made for good TV. I had the chair. I got some sore fingers from when the bat made contact with my knuckles. But we'll see who the real slugger is, November 5th.
Oh, he's great. Cactus Jack. And I heard there's a little boy in the background.
Yeah, there was definitely a little high-pitched voice running around.
Little Dewey.
Little Dewey. There was a couple times where he's all like, hold on. Dewey, get back.
Yeah, we on for Patreon because he does bring Dewey on for a few seconds to say hello. And I guess he was trying to do a little worked deal with Dewey, like to make believe he was beating him. Oh, you do?
I have that in the next clip here. But,
good. Good, yeah. Dewey was a cool kid, man. He liked, he was such a cute kid. He really was. I mean, when I would come over to Mick's apartment or whatever, and he was like, John Arezzi.
So good. He did want to refer to Herbo Turbo's event last weekend as last weekend's fiasco.
Yes.
Instead of the thing. That he is scheduled to go to Smoky Mountain for a little bit, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Do you remember what he ended up doing down there?
I really don't. I know he was there, not for a long run, because he spent most of his days then. He did independent shots. He did ECW. He'd go over to Japan. He'd come back. So Smoky Mountain. I don't know how long his tenure was there.
Yeah, it was a little something. He does say he has to go catch Dewey because he's running away.
Yeah.
And so you decide to go to do ads.
Okay.
And then when you come back from ads, this is
Dewey.
I believe the debut of the first interview. Dewey Jack.
Back with the program, and on the phone with us, we're very happy to have the one and only Cactus Jack, a man who has a cult following throughout the world of professional wrestling. How does it feel to be one of the most respected guys in the business? Are you there? Did we lose him?
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, John, when did you cut me off there?
Huh?
When did you cut me off?
Well, we took a commercial break.
Okay.
But we're back now.
When I ran away to get him?
Yes.
Okay. Because I pretended to be hitting him, and I hope that you didn't turn it off then, because I wasn't actually hitting him. It was an effect like this. And he was yelling, ah! It's a little joke we were playing.
Is he still there?
Yeah, he's still there. You want to talk to him?
Yeah.
Okay, Dewey, come here. You want to say hi to everyone on the radio? He's playing with a wheelbarrow.
Hey, Dewey.
He'll be back in a little bit.
All right.
All right.
I was asking you a question. I said, how does it feel to be one of the most respected wrestlers in the business?
Yeah, is that true?
Well, you know it is.
Hold on, here he is.
Hi.
Hi, Dewey. How you doing?
Mommy.
Are you with your daddy today? Say bang bang.
Baby.
Okay, did you hear that?
That was great.
All right. I think I've earned it. If it's true, I think I've earned it. And hopefully I'll continue to earn it. One thing I made real sure when I was an independent the last time I left WCW was that I worked hard every match, not just to try to collect some money, but to try to get better and make yourself even more valuable as an independent.
Yeah.
Not many people are able to do that. I mean, Sabu does it. Terry Funk was able to do it. And I was able to do it the last time. So anyone who sees an independent show out there, know that Cactus Jack is not out there just to take the money, but he's out there to wrestle hard to give you first your money's worth and second to become even better.
Well, certainly every time you're out there, whether it's before 50 people or 5,000 people, you do everything that pleases the fans out there. And I tell you, the reaction you got in the Loser Leaves WCW match was a pretty special one itself. The fans obviously had their favorite for that match, and it was you.
Yeah, I was kind of upset that the announcers were painting me as a bad guy. I don't think that dropping Kevin Sullivan on his head makes anyone a bad person.
Mm-mm.
You know what? I don't think it's fair to start saying what Cactus Jack is bad, and if I'd gone out there and the crowd had booed me, it really would have made me feel bad about what I'd done there the last 3 years. But the fact that they made up their mind that they were going to cheer who was their favorite made me feel real good. And I'm sorry the cameras never picked it up, but after the match I was standing there, a little bit sad because I was leaving, but also looking forward to the other opportunities. And so I jumped into the crowd and kind of ran up to the second level, but the cameras never showed it. And that was also kind of a special thing to have the people gathering all around, patting me on the back and all that.
Well, they should have showed it, because I noticed watching the telecast the other day, I watched a tape of it, and you heard the crowd popping right after your match. The crowd was going nuts for some reason, but they had the cameras focused backstage.
Yeah,
so
they
I
had
guess that was happening.
and I think they missed kind of a special moment, but that's...
But do they care?
What?
Do they care?
Who?
WCW.
Care about what?
About showing that particular situation.
Do
it would make them look bad. Here's a guy that's leaving the company, and the fans are patting him on the back, and it was a love fest for Cactus Jack. But of course,
yeah. Well, I think it would have been a lot more emotional added to the telecast, a lot more than an interview would have done. But those things are so, when they're on the air live, they've got interviews they need to put in at certain times. Surely, I think they should have cut from the interview and gone up there in lieu of the 3 years I'd put in there, and the fact that I wouldn't be there anymore. But that's a question. That's a questionable call.
Gee, who knows what they're going to do with Ric Flair on the 23rd?
I don't know.
Jeez.
But John, I'm going to have to get off. There's a train coming by, and I can't hear a thing. All right.
Well, listen, it was good talking to you.
So listen, you guys take it easy. All right.
You got it. Cactus Jack joining us here, and he is visiting. He's from East Setauket, Long Island, and his dad is retired now, I believe, but he was the person who ran the Scholastic Sports there, and Cactus, real name Michael Foley, out there in East Setauket, and it was good to see him yesterday, and it was a great card from ECW.
It's a good interview.
It's so cool just hearing him like chopping it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, we spent so much time together back then, and his I guess he was visiting his parents. Maybe that's where the train, because the apartment that he had in West Babylon was just in a residential neighborhood, not near any railroad tracks. But I think his parents lived nearby, one of those.
So was he like on a payphone, do you think?
That's a good question, because his cell phones weren't really that prominent. He might have been in the backyard on a extension cord or something. I mean, because there were phones outside. If you had a long enough wire, you could take your phone outside.
That's true. I just wonder, with the train being that close to him, if he'd walked down to the train station for a...
I don't know. I mean, I believe it would be from... I wouldn't see him calling from a payphone. And he said Dewey was wheeling a wheelbarrow or something.
That's a good point. He had a wheelbarrow.
He was probably playing in the backyard.
But yeah, I thought that was cool.
The tracks, Dewey.
Yeah. You got him to say bang bang. That was good.
Yes. I wish we were on the air when they did that. The sign guy at ECW held up that sign that said Kane Dewey.
Yeah.
Because he went nuts over that.
Yeah, how crazy.
He cut a promo it's on Peacock and all that. It was just incredible. They
shifted everything he was doing there.
Yeah.
He shifted his whole character because of that.
Yeah. He did. That's when he became a heel.
Yeah. He turned heel on the fans and did this whole anti-hardcore thing.
Right. He's wrestling scientifically.
Yeah. It was all like, I'm doing all this and that's, yeah. So it was brilliant, and yeah. Oh, that was nuts. But we should have had Dewey on to review his interview.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine.
He's like, I stand by what I said.
Exactly.
But yeah, it was really cool. You do get into callers after that.
Yeah, with trepidation.
Yeah, you were nervous. I didn't pull too many of them. They were pretty solid, though. A lot of them were about the ECW show or the Blackjack Brawl.
We didn't get any crank calls on this show.
None. No one weird. I was wondering if maybe you were vetting them better on the back end.
maybe because they came back for the second week to give me the shit, and I wasn't on the air, so they might have just dropped it and went away.
That's a good point. They're not dedicated, those types of people.
No.
They're not dedicated to the shtick.
Shit stirs.
Let's see. But John calls from Long Beach. He asks if any chance the Cactus goes to WWF. I didn't mean to pull this one. I did not, but so I thought it was pretty neat. But I will tell you, you said it was very unlikely, and that it was almost a never, just because the schedule was really full. That he already had scheduled that he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't give up all that amount of time. I thought that was interesting. And then the guy asked if he got the ear fix, and you said no, because he went from one thing to the next, and he would have had to go into surgery like right away, and he ran to the next show instead, and so it was just timed out.
And that ear is still not there.
No. And they wouldn't let him keep it.
Nope.
They threw it away. Right in front of him.
Imagine.
Hey. I mean, you ever watch Walking Dead? They have one guy wears a necklace of ears.
I know.
He could have. But yeah. Let's see. ECW has a contract with MSG, but the MSG network, but they're looking for sponsors. So I guess it was like a buy your own time. Like the contract for MSG1 was there, but
yeah.
I thought that was neat. Let's see. Someone came in asking all about the Pat Patterson charges and what happened there. You talk about how they got dropped, and then he says that he thinks ECW is going to be around for a really long time because what they're doing is really cool and catching a lot of heat, like good heat. I mean, but and he said he loved going to the show itself. He got to meet Cactus afterwards, and wondered if they might bring in the Ultimate Warrior.
What a fascination people have with that dude.
Yeah. I mean, you did say the WWF might bring him back because he hasn't been around and his price is too high for independence. And it was only about another year or two before he did.
Yeah.
Make that final little run. Let's see. The Sabu and Sandman in the ECW show the night before, both of them seemed to get injuries, and some people were calling and concerned about that, and you were a little concerned about that too, but you weren't sure exactly.
Now this was when not the Sabu, because the really bad Sabu injury against Benoit when he breaks his neck. That's coming up. I mean, that's coming up. Looking at the tapes here, Sabu injury is 11/6 on the 11/6 show, so it happened on November 5th, and we do cover that.
Yeah, he took some little injury.
A little one, yeah, but the other one was Sandman, because I believe that was the cigarette in the eye deal.
Yeah.
And everyone, they worked us because they had him laid out. Do I talk about that? Or is this the time?
No, it was in that one because you mentioned it was backstage. You saw them like washing his eye.
Yeah, because they I guess they were working everybody. Because everyone was kind of huddled around him, and he, couldn't see, and then they have that angle where he comes out with the eye patches for a while, but yeah, I mean that was kind of like they were working the boys back in the dressing room on that.
That's cool.
He was laid out in the dressing room there with taking him out. Everyone thought he was freaking blind.
That's crazy. That's so neat, huh? The last three callers I do have, though, are from are all about the Blackjack Brawl.
Yeah.
Because I was getting really interested in that. Let me see here. Let's play this one. It's Chris from Floral Park.
Chris from Floral Park, you're next.
Hi, I love before you dropped in the Kenny Devine line from the UWF
yes.
Steve Rossi.
Yes.
And he was reading the thing and said, "Now coming is Candy Devine."
Devinin, I think he called her something. It was so funny, you know. And she was like she was so angry after the match in the dressing room, like
she actually heard that and everything.
Yeah,
she heard that real good.
Yeah, she couldn't believe it, you know. And
were people going up to her and saying, "Hi, Mrs. Devine, where's Mrs.?"
I don't think there was enough of them there to do that.
You know what? I was watching the hockey game. I was actually tuned in. I forgot there was even on. You know, I was watching the hockey game right over to about 10:15 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Then the wrestling came on. How long did the card go on? Because I went to sleep around midnight.
It was a 3-hour show, 3-hour live show, and they joined it in progress here at Sports Channel.
Yeah.
But it continued for 3 hours.
I remember seeing a crawler on the bottom coming up, Kurt Hennig.
Yeah, well, Kurt was there. Kurt was not there that night, but when I arrived in Vegas last Thursday, Kurt was at the airport, and we drove together to the MGM Grand. And it was he was in great spirits, and he said he never met Herb Abrams before, but he's there to do an interview, and he's not going to wrestle. He was just going to talk. And apparently, either two things went down: either he met Herb and didn't like him and decided to pull out at the last minute, or his contract stipulations with the WWF until November indicate that he can't even appear on a TV interview for another promotion.
Yeah.
But just the fact that he was advertised on that show, like coming up next, Kurt Hennig, and then there's no Kurt Hennig. It was pretty much a joke, and it was an embarrassment to the company, the UWF,
but company.
To Mr. Electricity, Herb Abrams.
Herbo.
It was. I couldn't believe.
I watched the show. I saw the women's match, and was it the a couple matches? I couldn't recognize a lot of the people. You know. Then I know Sid Vicious was supposed to be on there, right? Did he ever wrestle?
Yeah, Sid was against Dr. Death, and that ended in a DQ where Dr. Death had just power-bombed Sid, and then Danny Spivey ran in and hit the ring, and there was a DQ. But it was just, it was Herb, I like him. He's a funny guy, but
I loved him in the ring there. That was the microphone.
But it doesn't belong in the ring. He was getting beat up like every match. One of the wrestlers was hitting him. He was throwing. He got involved in a match. He gave a chair to Ludwig Borga, who cut open Bob Orton. Which was
bloody. That was.
He got like 18 stitches above the eye.
That was brutal, man.
So it was a pretty wacky night.
I thought like some cameraman was going to get tangled up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The people getting their feet mixed up.
The funniest line that Herb gave the entire show was during a commercial break when he yelled out to the crowd, "Let's hear it for Jews," which was pretty funny.
But what a non sequitur in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it was.
You know what the funny thing is, Steve Rossi, and I couldn't. Was that Steve Rossi from? I seen him on. He run the Stern Show and everything.
Yes, that same guy.
If that had absolutely any audience, Howard would have known about that. Him actually saying Candy Devine and actually being Candy Divine, he would be ripped like for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Oh, that was incredible. I loved the and the announcing team. That was Coach, right?
Well, John Tolis and the other guy who's doing the play-by-play, I think was just a personal friend of Herb's.
Personal friend, someone he met on the corner.
I don't know.
I love the outfit he had on.
The canary yellow sports jacket and boots.
What was the thing, when they're working out? Oh, this is the feud, the angle. It was like 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Are they going to do anything else?
They were scheduled to have Blackjack Brawl 2 November. I think it was November 17th, I believe, was the date for that. But I don't know if that's been confirmed or not.
Man.
I really don't know. But if I had to take a guess today, I would say that there will not be a live Blackjack Brawl 2. That's just my personal guess.
I'd love to see, like, the pay-per-view buy for that.
Well, I don't know if it'll get to the pay-per-view point. Herb has done a pay-per-view before, which was, I think, was the lowest recorded buy rate in wrestling history.
Didn't Backlund actually win a belt on that?
Yeah, I know he didn't win a belt, but he fought Ivan Koloff.
Oh, yeah, Ivan Koloff. Your question, when you say like Terry Funk called him up and said he's leaving, does he have like a contract different? Because he does he just call up say. Look,
he doesn't have an exclusive with them, no.
Okay, so he could just say I don't want to.
Right. If he wasn't satisfied with the money deal and he wasn't satisfied with the way his push there, Terry just received a real lucrative offer. He just jumped promotions in Japan as well. Went from FMW to the IWA, run by Victor Quinones.
Yeah, they showed Backlund yesterday, like wrestling in Japan. They showed this is Backlund tape from Japan. Was Backlund actually in Japan pretty recently?
Yeah, Bob has been there with Wing, and he was he won the 6-man tag team titles with the Warlord and Scott Putski.
Well, he's wrestling a lot.
Yeah, so he's definitely working a lot. Well, listen, we got to run.
Hey, I really enjoy the show.
Thank you very much.
I'm glad to see you back. Last week I tuned in and said, uh-oh.
Well, a couple of weeks ago I was thinking about not coming back, but I said...
I know, you hear all the junk and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, well,
I was
that's
trying to get the word out of you back then.
Thank you.
Hey, have a nice day.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, next week we're not on the air either.
Yeah, I don't want to.
Well, I for some reason, because I uploaded the other, the next show that we're going to cover. So I was like, why is it go from 250 to show 252? And then I kind of explain it. I ran a best of. I ran a Weekend of Champions 91 deal. So I don't know where I was, what I was doing that weekend, or if I just said screw it. I don't know.
All right.
It was getting towards the end, Marsh. I didn't care.
Well, and like you said, a lot of why you came back was to promote a show that wasn't going to happen anymore.
That's true. And I wind up going to probably the worst worst show in history with the Blackjack Brawl. That was that was amazing.
They showed almost none of the audience until, like you said last week, Snuka and Cactus fight up into the crowd during their lumberjack match.
Yeah.
And you see then that there's just like no one there. And they get double disqualified. And that's the end of the match.
You pulled a video clip for the YouTube version of this. Is that correct?
Yes. I was going to go into that right now.
Oh, good. Let's go into that.
This is like the tail end of that. And this was Herb Abrams introducing the main event. And I just couldn't stop laughing. I replayed it a couple times because it's just like, I got to know if this is just how he was all the time.
He was so coked up that night. Imagine being the promoter and the owner of the company on air, and he's doing coke like the whole night.
Like visibly?
He was doing coke the whole night.
So this is the end of the night. Let's see what he's
Let's see what he's up to.
We're going to go now to Herb Abrams instead of Steve Rossi.
Yeah, that was the other thing. They said we're going to go to Steve Rossi to announce the main event. And all of a sudden there's like a pause and he goes, apparently not. So that means Herb just suddenly decided, no, put me on.
Amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event. The showdown will take place. Steve Dr. Matt Williams puts the title on the line. And Steve Millicent, Sid Vicious.
Oh my God. I guess if you knew you have a 18,000 seater empty. There were more wrestlers in the back probably than fans. Yeah. And you just say, screw it. I don't care. I'm just going to do my coke and I'm going to do what I want. I'm having fun. It's my party.
I love the way
my
he said
party, and I'll do coke if I want to.
Just the way he screams, "Dead on the line!" And then as soon as he's done screaming, the camera stayed on him, and you could just see like just that he was so proud of himself. Just that's perfect.
Yeah, he loved it.
Yeah, he was cracking me up. Dead on the line. So good. But the canary yellow.
Yeah, he was funny. And he always called me Jonathan.
Really?
Yes. He was hilarious, this guy. Yeah. What a character. One of the most infamous characters in the history of wrestling.
And throughout all of this show, the wrestlers were picking on him.
Of course.
They'd push him a little bit. He would scream at him. He'd cut little promos and like throw a kick at him for no reason.
And I forget when he had that wrestling manager guy, and they were doing that sit down interview, and there was some heat going on, and he threw some water out. And he went into the microphone and goes, "I wish that cup was filled with urine."
So good. Other the graphic comes up like almost all the way through, like they didn't have it ready because clearly they weren't supposed to go to him. It goes Mr. Electricity. It's amazing. Did he give himself that name?
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else. I know Herbo Turbo was the Power Twins name for him, but yeah, Mr. Electricity was probably just his own nickname for himself.
The Power Twins did show up in this, and I did not expect them where they were. So they had a warlord in the new Powers of Pain. He was the Power Warrior.
The Power Warrior.
Yeah. And he was the other half of
He was
the new
so creative
thing.
too, wasn't Herb? Just so creative.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they swapped out the twins at the end. They did the old twin switch out.
Yeah.
And that's the first time they go, oh my God, it's the Power Twins. Like you didn't know who one of them was to begin with.
And here's a guy who, in his very first TV taping, used an enhancement guy that he called him Dave Meltzer.
So funny.
And he Dr. Death stuffed a Wrestling Observer in his mouth at the end of the match.
So good.
It was like very historic, campy wrestling.
Yeah.
With a guy that was just a character among characters in the wrestling business. And he's probably one of the all-time lunatics that ever did anything in pro wrestling. Yeah. God rest your soul, Herbie. Even in the way he died.
Yeah. Apparently that was I mean, I've heard the story, but it's amazing. But they what was it? The Killer Bees beat the Powers of Pain.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian Blair told a story or two about working for Herb. I guess that was the only match they ever had. They were crowned the tag champions, and then that was it. And they had 11 titles that night on the show. Every match was a title match. The titles of the law. But it was crazy, that whole show. And it was neat because, like, the weirdest part was that the matches weren't bad. You had skilled people in there.
Yeah.
But everything between the matches was like, what is happening? And then the ending of the matches would be like, why is that happening? Like,
I know. It was all crazy. I had to be there. I had to because of, helping him launch at my first convention. That's when he launched UWF and that crazy press conference on that angle, and then working with him on bringing it to New York. And I had to be there because I knew it was going to be a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
And I just had to see what?
Did you ever hear from him after this? Yeah.
I don't know.
Because nobody called you for months leading up to it.
Yeah.
I just wonder if after this he was like, I'm done.
I don't think he ever kind of put that in his heart that he was done.
Yeah. Were you backstage for a lot of it?
Yeah.
I was looking for you in the crowd when I was watching it.
Well, I mean, I did watch, I do remember watching the Snuka Cactus match from the stands because I just wanted to see what they were going to do.
Yeah.
But I was mostly in the back, and George Napolitano was there, and I was hanging out. I was having fun.
Yeah.
Because it was crazy, and everyone's laughing their asses off backstage. They knew it was a joke.
They looked through the curtains to see the house.
Yeah, what house?
Yeah.
Empty.
So crazy. What did it? Oh, it was nuts. I like how you were kind of, in a sense, not exactly, but you're almost like Forrest Gumpish in the world of all these crazy historical weird wrestling things and country music things and just New York, and it's all like, oh, and there's John. John's over in the corner. Hey.
Forrest Gumpish, yeah. First time anyone's ever said that about me.
Well, I mean, you had more purpose than Forrest Gump had at a lot of those things.
Well, but I'm like, because I was. When you look around, I mean, I told you a story before we started taping about an infamous character that I was kind of sitting at the table with.
And it's all like, I mean, if you just like peep into history and look around, you saw like 40% of the time it's like, is that John Arezzi? Like, yeah.
Hey, who gets to fire Donald Trump on national TV?
Yeah. It's nuts.
Right? Especially now.
Yeah.
My God.
So good.
I had to do it.
Yeah.
NBC, if you ever want to watch Deal or No Deal, season 3, episode 1, it's out there on Tubi and all these other places. You could see me fired Trump.
Were you a contestant on it?
You never saw the show?
I gotta pull it up, but no. Should we do a watch along?
No, my sister wouldn't talk to me anymore. My sister was the contestant.
She was the contestant. Okay.
Yeah, I was one of the helpers. The show was designed to. She wanted to move back to New York. She lived in Tennessee with my nephew, and I loved Deal or No Deal. I used to watch it every week. I loved it because the models, the 26 models with the briefcases, and I was like, and I used to love it. And it was kind of like these sad stories of people who always made the bad decisions, and my sister wanted to go back to New York, and there was an open audition for Deal or No Deal here in Nashville, and I told her, go audition for that. She goes, I don't like that show. You like that show. I was like, but they'll pick you because it's going to be all these people from the South, and you're like Marissa Tomei from My Cousin Vinny, so why don't you just go? Well, Dominic's going to, Dominic has a Little League game that day. I was like, well, I'll take him to his Little League game. And my nephew hadn't gotten a hit yet playing the Little League. And I was like, he'll probably get his first hit, which he did. Yeah. But she went there and waited online for like 12 hours. And they only give you 20 seconds to meet with the casting people once. And the line was like a 12, 14-hour wait to get in. And as soon as she walked in, the casting people, she just immediately went into a promo. I've been outside for 14 hours. There's no bathroom. There's no coffee. There's no nothing. And they just pointed and said, you stay. And they called her back the next day for a mock game, which I was there with a friend of mine, and we just played the mock game. And lo and behold, she gets the call. She's on season premiere, season 3. And the producers had us, had me, like, we're going to make this a New York themed show for Donna. And so they actually flew out 30 to 35 people to California to surprise her.
That's crazy.
But it was it was heartbreaking. It really was. I mean, the whole thing, even when I watch it today, it's kind of like I cringe because of the end result of the show. And but Donald Trump was the guest banker that night, with no one knowing about it until we're on the air.
Yeah.
And it unfolds into a very interesting scenario with Trump. And so anyway, you could watch it. I'm on there. And that's when people they wrote about it in the rest, because I hadn't been seen or heard from in literally from when I left the business in 96, and this show was taped in 2007. So no one had seen or heard from me in 11 years. And here I show up on national TV on Deal or No Deal. And the, Wrestling Observer wrote about it, and the Torch and all of it. And that's how
I used to watch that show too. So I wonder if I saw it all those years ago.
Yeah, I mean, the Trump thing was interesting to me because I knew, because he had The Apprentice too, and I used to be a big fan of The Apprentice. And he made a lowball offer on my sister after she opened up, some of the cases, and I said to Howie Mandel, "Can I say something to Mr. Trump?" And he said, "Go ahead." And I just pointed at him like he used to do on the TV show, and I was like, "You're fired." And it was funny when NBC was promoting the show for the week before it aired. They played that promo over and over again. Me saying, "You're fired."
So good.
Anyway, I digress. We all digress. I get into tangents sometimes, Marsh. When you call me Forrest Gump, things just flow into my head.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is all of a sudden you're just like, "There's John again." So good. We got 2 more callers before the tape cuts out. I got them both. Let's start with Pete talking about the Blackjack Brawl.
955-1240 is the number to call here at the program, and we're going to go to Pete from Eatontown, New Jersey. Pete, you're next.
Hey, John, how you doing?
Pete, how you doing?
Very good. I'm sorry I wasn't able to make that ECW card last night. I heard it was, just from the comments on your show, it was fantastic as usual.
It was another wild one.
Just one minor correction on the program today. I also watched Herbo Turbo's show last week, and Steve Rossi called Candy Divian.
Oh, Divian, okay.
Candy Divian. The first time I heard it, I figured, well, he screwed up, but he repeated it about 5 different times. It was unbelievable.
Did you buy a Mr. Electricity T-shirt?
No, I did not. I was beginning to wonder by the end of the show, maybe they called him Mr. Electricity because that's maybe the kind of chair that they ought to sit him in. But the match between Snuka and Cactus, I thought was very interesting that they decided to brawl outside, and they went up about 20 rows. Only the first 2 rows had people. The next 18 had nobody.
Yeah.
I wonder how they decided which row to pick on.
I don't know, but I know Cactus wanted to do something entertaining there. It was a lumberjack match and all, and he couldn't do his usual spots as far as any elbows off the ring apron because in a lumberjack match you can't do that.
Right.
And they were wondering when they were there why even what was the purpose of the lumberjack match.
Right. I would think. I mean, I know that Cactus, wrestling is a living. Cactus works for a living. He makes money. But I was wondering after that if he hadn't hurt his reputation by appearing on the show, because it was quite a weird program. Let me leave it at that.
Well, it was pretty bizarre, but he had some top names. Steve Williams is one of the best wrestlers in the world.
Yeah.
And Steve, I guess, apparently has a fondness for Mr. Electricity, Herb Abrams, and was there. Danny Spivey, Bob Orton is still a great
wrestler.
So we had a pretty loaded show.
I think the show had a great deal of name value, but it just goes to prove that to try to sell a show without a weekly interest building up to a pay-per-view, it just doesn't seem to work.
Yeah, and the fact that the promoter put himself in the middle of at the end of every match, and
yes.
That certainly took away from it as well.
Yes, John. One last quick question for you. I know Cactus has a full plate at this point in his career, and he's in very high demand. Do you know if he was ever approached by the WWF, number one, and if they ever did express an interest in him? You're close to him. What do you think he would do?
I don't think that he would go to the WWF, but as far as just because the money is just not there right now, the guys, from what I understand, were even cut back. Their TV money now. They're only getting $100 for TV.
Yeah.
So it's very, very low, and you got to be on call, and you got to be on that rigid schedule and that travel schedule, which is a killer.
Right.
But as far as the idea of him going into the company, I talked to someone who was an employee of the WWF up until recently, and he went personally to Vince and tried to sell him on Cactus Jack, and Vince was just not interested at that point.
I see.
But it's a marriage which probably won't ever happen.
Yeah, well, Cactus is a master of mayhem and violence, and it seems that there's a lot of pressure not to have that much of it on TV, even for wrestling nowadays. I mean, I couldn't believe the cage match at Fall Brawl. You have 4 guys in there, Terry Funk, the 2 Roses, the Nasty Boys. Everybody's getting raked, their faces getting raked across the cage, and Heenan is saying, wow, that's just, you ever grate some cheese on a cheese grater or push a tomato through a screen door? This is what it's like. Well, how come nobody's bleeding?
Yeah. Well, they're very conservative now with all of that in WCW and in the WWF, and
right.
They're turning off the hardcore fans that do enjoy watching that occasionally.
Right.
You don't have to do it every show, but it is effective when it's done sporadically.
Right. It's like I say, it would have been effective in a steel cage match because everything is there, and it is on a pay-per-view, so not everybody's seeing it. Little kiddies seeing it by accident.
Yeah.
But as long as we have the independence, John. That's what we have to shoot for as far as that kind of brand of wrestling, I suppose.
Well, everyone likes different things. There's merit with every wrestling that's out there right now. But, personally, I don't enjoy the corporations anymore.
Right.
Well, I haven't really in a long time, but there are some guys that I enjoy watching in the WWF and WCW.
Yes.
But it's getting fewer and fewer.
Yep.
All right, Pete, listen, I thank you for your call.
Okay, John, see you soon.
Okay, take care now.
One of my favorite callers of all time, Pete from Eatontown, Pete Theopol.
Who could you possibly have talked to that just left the WWF who was really high on Cactus Jack and tried to sell him to Vince?
Jim Ross?
Racking my brain. Yeah. I mean, it was funny you said that because you like 2 weeks before you're like, JR's at Smoky Mountain. JR just left. We're trying to get JR on the show. And then here you're all like, I talked to somebody. Like, trying to be secretive. I thought that was interesting. That was cool. It was also neat to know that he tried a number of times to sell Cactus.
Yeah, he did. McMahon didn't want him.
Yeah.
I make mistakes too occasionally, pal.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, it's crazy too. Like, Foley's just so undeniable. That the idea being too, like, we'll cover his face.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to give him a crazy gimmick. He's going to be nothing like Cactus Jack. He can't be who he was. We're going to subdue his character in a lot of ways. And then he was still like, yeah, I can make that work.
Mm-hmm.
And
did he ever?
And the other thing too is that, like, when you watch his first couple of promos in WWF, I know this is like a year or two away, they're so standout and iconic as they are. You're like, this is a fleshed out everything. Like, this was impactful.
Oh, that sit down with Jim Ross in the beginning.
Well, that was a little bit later, but I mean, it was not super later, but it was like within the first few months. But like the first couple of vignettes with him in the boiler room and him with George the Rat,
and crazy music like that.
Yeah,
almost like Phantom of the Opera type music.
There's a lot of characters that I remember, but there's very few that I remember the first time I saw them, especially when I was that young.
Yeah,
and he's one. He was one of media was like, oh my God, I was terrified.
Yeah, it went over.
Yeah, but it's cool. Do you have a Pete from Eatontown story?
Well, Pete was one of the boosters. He was one of the biggest fans of the show. He used to actually come on in the early days, and he used to write poems. Like, he wrote poems for the newsletter. He was just great at what he did, and he had so much. He adored the show so much, and he used to be the guy that when we were on WNYG, he used to have to drive around his neighborhood to find a spot and park his car where he could hear the show. It was crazy.
Yeah, he was the one who was the cops pulled him over while he was parked.
Yes.
Ask him what he's doing.
Same dude. And he became friends with Georgia Macropolis, and he wrote poems for her, and I believe he illustrated the covers for all of her Chatterbox newsletters. I think that was his artwork.
I have a picture of the one where she passed. There's a drawing there. I wonder if he did that drawing.
Maybe.
Yeah. There was a lot going on though. The Herb going into the ring. Did you get him a Mr. Electricity shirt? But this is the final caller, and then this is kind of where the tape cuts out actually too.
Okay.
But it was actually a really great conversation that kind of ended, not
midstream.
I mean,
towards the end, maybe.
It felt like it was towards the end. It felt like you were wrapping it up, but at the same time, like you're kind of going like, wait.
We're going to get back to the phones and travel over to Brooklyn and speak to Marshall.
Hello, John?
Yes.
How you doing? I want to talk a little bit about the Blackjack Brawl and also about WCW. The Blackjack Brawl was so pathetically bad that it was almost good. It was sort of like Art Donovan, when he was announcing.
Yeah, I hear you.
I mean, but the fact is that they were able to clear 3 hours on Sports Channel nationally, which means there's a hunger for a good product. And I mean, is there a chance that maybe ECW or one of the other independent promotions that actually know what they're doing might do this in the future?
Well, I know for a fact that Sports Channel is hungry for wrestling programming right now. Especially now, the NHL is out for at least 2 weeks. They are looking for a weekly program to get behind and to do a pay-per-view with in a year or so down the road. So whether it's ECW, whether it's another indie promotion that's going to be springing up and getting in there, that remains to be seen. But they gave Herb the opportunity, and I spoke to one of the people at Sports Channel in Vegas last week, and he mentioned that it was an experiment for them. But they are looking to get behind a wrestling product, so hopefully one will come out and emerge.
Well, I once saw one of the UWF cards. I think it was at the Ramada Hotel across the street from the Garden.
Yeah.
And I don't mean this to sound flippant, but maybe Herb should try and do a show when he's sober. I mean...
I don't know if he was... I don't think that had anything to do with it. I think that's his personality. He likes to put himself over, and that's the biggest problem he's got.
I think it is, because the fans don't know or care who he is.
Well, in 1990, he was voted worst wrestling personality, most obnoxious wrestling personality in the polls by the Wrestling Observer newsletter. So the fans certainly don't enjoy watching him. He had been gone for a few years, and frankly, I forgot how bad he was. And I learned firsthand by being out there at the show. I go back with the UWF. When they first came to New York, I was doing the setup work for him for that very first New York show at the Penta, and then we had a split right after that first show because it was just I couldn't work with the guy. But we have always remained in contact via the telephone, and he is a funny guy. He makes me laugh all the time when I'm talking to him. He's so outrageous, his personality. But just getting out there and seeing the product again that he put out there, especially being given the opportunity from Sports Channel to be on live television, man, I couldn't believe it. It's like a wasted opportunity.
It was. I mean, and a guy who I respect, John Tolis. I mean, he was just horrible. I mean, you were there live. So
well, he didn't have much to work with as far as his play-by-play man.
Yeah, but he was yelling about this is the greatest thing he's ever seen. And
well, what else can he say? He can't say it sucks.
Well, I guess he just kind of report on the action. Don't say.
Yeah.
Now, another thing about WCW, I had read in the Torch last week that this Hogan-Flair retirement match, it would only be a retirement match for Flair if Flair's team loses next Sunday. Has that been changed?
As far as for the match that's going to be on the main event?
No. Next Sunday, Hogan and Dave
Sullivan team up against Flair and a mystery opponent.
Right, against Dave. Well, in the Torch they indicated it would be Arn Anderson. And they said that if Flair's team loses that match, then the pay-per-view would be a retirement match for both. But if Flair's team wins that match, then it's only still a retirement match for Hogan.
Well, maybe they're leading up to that. I didn't see the Saturday program yesterday.
I didn't either.
So maybe that's what they're leading up to, and I think that mystery opponent, now that I think about it, might be Kevin Sullivan. Because he and Dave are going to be facing each other on the pay-per-view.
Oh, that would be interesting. Now, one more thing. I was very, very disappointed that Jesse the Body has kind of been let go, and I'm really disappointed with the emphasis that WCW puts on Heenan, because he's fine, but I think Jesse the Body was great. I think Zbyszko was great. I really liked Terry Taylor when he was doing commentary, but it seems like they've just thrown everything to Heenan, who to me, I just get tired of him after a while.
Well, variety's the spice of life, but they seem to can't get enough of Bobby Heenan for whatever reason, and Jesse is the odd man out, even though he's got that big contract. That's surprising to me because I thought Jesse was better in his WWF days, but he's still better than a lot of the guys that are out there, and you don't want to see Bobby Heenan every single week. He's great, no. He's funny, he's witty, but overkill is too much in anything.
I mean, at least with Jesse, there's a semblance of objectivity, even though he's kind of a heel announcer. There's definitely a semblance of objectivity, and the same with Zbyszko. But I mean, Heenan is just, I don't know. There's just nothing on.
And that was it.
That was it. Kind of trashing Heenan a little bit, but I get it. I mean, even when I listen back to WCW now, there's times where I think that he was a little much at times, but I mean, I still like him. He still makes me laugh. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you hear the same thing every week from anybody, and it's going to turn off half the crowd anyhow. Like, what do they say about consistency build contempt or something like that?
Very true.
So. But it was interesting to hear someone say it in a way that wasn't like a jerk. He was just like,
last few calls were really good.
Yeah. I did like you talked about the Blackjack was so bad that it was almost good,
Yeah. And that's the truth.
And you said the Sports Channel... You said the Sports Channel was hungry for wrestling content and that you had known that they were specifically looking for a weekly show. Did you talk to them about IWAS?
Well, I was waiting for Herb to implode before that was made. But the overture either was made or wasn't. I was probably feeling it out in Vegas.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Because the way you talked about it, I was like, oh, he knows that they're looking for content, which means that he had that conversation.
Well, they gave the guy a few different opportunities. So obviously they were looking for something. They ran that Mario Savoldi ICW stuff for a long time. Yeah, so obviously wrestling was on their radar, and they wanted something consistent and good. And I'm sure it would have been a good situation for somebody, but what they were tossed was just the dregs of wrestling.
And they're like, I don't think this is what we want.
Yeah.
That could have been a good window for AAA, too.
Yeah, could have been. Could have been. What could have been, Marsh? Famous
Manana.
last words. So that's, I guess that's it for this week.
Yeah, that was it on this one. Blackjack Brawl is definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. I mean, you could find different matches on there and stuff.
I found the whole thing just in one shot.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Maybe
so you can get
maybe
it.
I'll find that link and put it up for patrons for this weekend.
I'll send it to you so that way people can watch it. And
yeah, so
they have a commercial for the T-shirts, and Sid Vicious walks across the and then walks back in. He goes, "I'm trying to find where are they at? MSG? No, not MSG. MGM. I'm trying to find MGM. I'm supposed to be a show." And they're like, "You're here," and he's like, "Oh!" And then it kind of like, and then he cuts a promo. So weirdly put together.
One of the oddest wrestling shows ever.
Did you keep a program from that one?
Probably not.
You should
have. Hey, what could have been?
Yeah.
I do have a Herbie cookie though. Still,
you
that
do.
Nicole made. I do. I have the Herbie cookie. Hold on.
Yeah.
This is a collector's item. I think there was only less than a handful made. I know I got one. Sunny Beach got one.
Yeah, the Herbie cookies.
With that outfit from that Vegas show. The hair on the chest. And of course, it says on the back, not to eat.
Yeah.
And it says on the little asterisk, cocaine not included.
Yeah. Not included on that one. I like how that guy, too, was the guy before this one where he said, imagine what he could have done if he laid off the drugs. You're like, I don't know if that was the problem.
Yeah. Well, you couldn't say it on the air back then, but
yeah. Yeah, you were very careful of Laible.
You have to be. I was always careful of Donnie Laible.
Yeah. Who was the announcer was like, what, Scott Rossi?
I believe. Jim Rossi, Scott Rossi.
Steve Rossi.
Steve Rossi. That was the guy's
Steve
name.
Rossi.
Yeah, because there was an old comedian named Steve Rossi years and years ago, but it wasn't the same guy.
Do you know what his deal was? Because he was mispronouncing a lot, and he did a really weird job.
He was probably a friend of Herb's.
Yeah.
That was horrible.
And the Candy Davini was so weirdly incorrect because the name's not even spelt in the way he was saying it.
Not hard to pronounce.
And it wasn't like where you hear now, where they're like, coming to the ring, Kenny Omega. It's like, he said it over and over. Yeah. Coming down, Candy Davini. Candy Davini. Here comes Candy Davini. And you're all like,
maybe he's partaking during commercial breaks with Herbo Turbo, Mr. Electricity.
That could be. Could be why Herb had to take over at the end.
Maybe.
The guy was like,
maybe he was the dealer for Herb. Who knows?
That could have been. You had to go get more. I'll wrap it up.
You got to watch that show. Everybody who hasn't seen it, you got to watch it. I'll put up a link on our Patreon, and you can find it on YouTube, I'm sure. But I may even watch it again just for shits and giggles.
It's not a bad card. It's a weird show. And that's what was my big takeaway. Was like, I'm sure it was a ton of fun for the people who went.
Yeah.
But everyone walked away going, I don't know what that was.
What was it?
Yeah. It was weird. There are Mr. Electricity t-shirts that someone's making now based off of the Dark Side of the Ring or whatever. So those are out there. Someone can look up. I didn't find any distributors that looked legitimate. It looked like a lot of counterfeit stuff. So I'm sure there's an original somewhere out there. So that's why I'm not going to promote a site, but there are Herb Abrams shirts.
Yeah, be careful though. Buyer beware if you're clicking on a link.
Buyer beware. But
hey,
yeah,
listen, I
that
see
was-
T-shirts all the time with Pro Wrestling Spotlight. I mean, it's like they put advertising. I delete them immediately and report them. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of scammers out there. You got to be careful.
That's true.
Got to watch out what you click.
Yeah. Well, and then there's a lot of bots that are part of these like weird T-shirt company things where they will make the shirt, but it looks really weird and awful.
Yeah.
And then when you try to report it, that site's gone and there's a new one, and it's a weird thing. But yeah, be careful. But there is Herb Abrams shirts out there, and if you want to watch 11 titles on the line, Blackjack Brawl is the one.
You know where to go.
Yeah.
All right, my friend Marsh.
It was a neat show.
Good one, and we'll be back. And even though there's we're not going to review the Pro Wrestling Spotlight Weekend of Champions thing. I don't have a tape of it, But then we will be back next week to review the show that is going to be from, I guess it's 10/16. And I've already uploaded that one for you.
Yep.
Wade Keller and the speeches from Cauliflower Alley with Grillo Monsoon and Pedro Morales. So for you historians out there, that'll be a good one for you guys to check out.
That's really cool. I bet you those tapes aren't anywhere.
No.
The speeches. Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah,
for sure.
It'll be fun. And then we come back with Bruno and Dave Meltzer, and then Too Cold Scorpio, Paulie E, Sabu's injury, Paulie again, Cactus, Tammy Fitch, Candido, Public Enemy. I mean, there's so much to go in the next 10 or so episodes that we have left before this run is over.
Yep, your show's as loaded as Herb Abrams.
That's right, without the cocaine.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it was a good one. It was nice to hear a debut of Dewey Foley.
Yes.
Dewey Jack, I think, at the time.
Mm-hmm. Dewey Jack. Oh, man. All right, Marsh. Let everybody know what you got going on. You got some cool things happening. And, of course, you're always out there with Alundra/Medusa.
Yeah, and then she's got some great news that's going to be breaking in the next 2 weeks. So check her out on youtube.com/Queen of Carnage.
Mm-hmm.
She's got an interview coming out with Magnum TA in the middle of November where they drop some hot news.
Awesome.
So definitely check that out over there. Wrestling on the Rocks is about to make its big comeback.
Yay.
Taking a little bit of a break to kind of readjust and reformat, and we're going to come back stronger and drunker than ever, I think.
Good.
Yeah. So we'll have you come on and maybe have a drink and talk about Crown Jewel or something.
That'll be great.
So
that'll be great.
And then of course I'm here with you, John, at Pro Wrestling Spotlight and YouTube.com.
Yeah, that's right. We're everywhere.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. It's good to see you as always. And that'll wrap up this edition of the show. You can join our private group at facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight podcast and radio show. We have a public page, really big engagement on this picture I put up of a bloody superstar Billy Graham and Ivan Koloff giving me the stink eye. It's gotten quite a number of impressions on all the platforms. So if you want to see that photo and so many others, go to our public page on Facebook. And that is simply John Arezzi's Map Memories. Look for it there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Pro Wrestling Spotlight. Follow me on Twitter if you'd like to, at John Arezzi, Instagram at John Arezzi, Threads at John Arezzi as well. And our sister podcast, Map Memories from Madison Square Garden, current episode out right now, covering October 15th, 1973, the Mecca of all arenas, Madison Square Garden. So check that one out. It's co-hosted by Tim Poutre, written and researched by Richie Garcia. As always, I want to thank our producer and creative director, Marsh, and I want to thank each and every one of the patrons for their support, for helping with the production costs of this show, and especially those executive producers, Anthony Pyrus and Joe Holloway. Until next week, when we relive more history with you, this is John Arezzi for the Pro Wrestling Spotlight.